From fighting the possessed bodies of his former friends and leading medieval armies to battle, to saving the world in a Mad Max-esque hellscape, Ash J. Williams truly has been through it. And with verging timelines, alternative continuities, and a fairly loose canon, his story can be a little hard to pin down. Luckily, you're watching Bloody Good. Hello, my name is Montgomery, and today we're looking at Ash Williams from the Evil Dead franchise. We're going to be exploring numerous things about his life, to how many Deadites he kills, to his true age, and why his personality changes just so dramatically movie to movie. On April 8th, 1957, the world would get a lot more groovy when Ashley Jonah Williams was born, to father Brock Williams and mother Caroline Williams, in Elk Grove, Michigan. And in 1964, Ash's sister Cheryl would also be born. Now, during his teenage years, Ash's mother would leave the family, leaving them to be raised by his father. Now, it would be around this same time Ash would be purchased a car by his father from the local destruction derby, a 1973 Oldsmobile, a Delta 88. Later on, Ash would start dating Linda. Well, okay, this is where it gets a bit complicated. There's actually two Lindas who are kind of the same, kind of not. But we're just going to treat them as the same Linda because canon. Now, it was during this time of dating Linda, Ash would purchase tickets for a romantic getaway in Jacksonville, Florida. However, before they could get a chance to go on this romantic vacation with each other, they took a weekend trip with a couple of friends to a cabin in the isolation of the woods. And this is where Ash's life would be forever changed. At 25 years old, Ash would travel up to the cabin with his girlfriend Linda, sister Cheryl, his friend Scotty, and Scotty's girlfriend Shelley. Now this is where things already get a little interesting, as Scotty claims he rented the cabin for super cheap. But we know the cabin belongs to Professor Raymond Noby, who is most likely dead just before the events of the first film. So the question is, who rented this cabin to Scotty? Well, I propose a theory. Scotty. Full of shit. Scotty simply heard of or already found an abandoned cabin, but fairly nice looking, and simply broke in. And on top of that, most likely stole the money from his friends when they were splitting the cost of renting it. And this theory is further backed up thanks to the unofficial Evil Dead musical, which is just amazing, by the way. Watch it if you haven't. But in this musical, it combines the first two films. More on that later. In this musical, it shows Scotty actually breaking a lock to get into the cabin. Now, this musical has been pretty much embraced by the creators of the Evil Dead, so hey, good enough for them, good enough for me. Apologies for the unhinged rant, but many more to follow. While exploring the cabin, they discover a tape with a recording of Professor Raymond Noby reading aloud passages from the Necronomicon. This awakens a Kandarian demon, and so the Night of Terror begins. The demons begin possessing each of Ash's friends and family one by one. Ash's sister is the first to be attacked when isolated in the woods, and Ash reluctantly agrees to drive her to the nearest town but discovers the bridge has been torn apart, leaving them trapped. Ash returns to the cabin with his sister and her condition worsens, and Ash spends a horrific night witnessing horrors beyond comprehension as each one of his friends is murdered and possessed. During this time, Ash is forced to defend himself, beheading his girlfriend Linda with a shovel and shooting his sister Cheryl in the face. Ash becomes overwhelmed by the end of the night, and in a last-ditch attempt, he throws the Necronomicon into the fireplace. As he does, the book itself screams in agony, and his friends melt into Play-Doh on the ground. At the end of this night of terror, Ash steps out of the cabin, greeted by the daylight of a brand new day. Until he is attacked by an unseen force and the film ends, and this is where things already get complicated. Now, in the real world, when making a sequel to Evil Dead 2, they did not have the rights to use any of the footage from the previous film, forcing them to open with a mini remake of the previous film, kind of giving the implication that Ash was dumb enough to return to the cabin with another girlfriend, or a somewhat popular theory that he was possessed at this time and was bringing new victims back to the cabin, but Bruce Campbell actually has a pretty good explanation for this.
We couldn't get the rights to our own movie, which is the most ridiculous thing ever. So we just shot a recap with different actors as though that was the recap, but people thought, what's with all, he's coming back to the same cabin with these new people? What? So there's a big debate of is Evil Dead 2 a remake or a sequel? It's a requel. You know, it's whatever you want to call it.
After being hit by this entity and thrown across the forest, Ash is momentarily possessed, and then cured thanks to the shining sun of daylight. Injured, exhausted, and half crazed, Ash collapses into the mud, passing out for several hours to get some well-deserved rest. And this definitely does not help with the numerous head injuries and likely concussions, but again, more on that later. Ash is forced back into the cabin by the spirits and is bitten on the hand by the possessed body of his dead girlfriend, infecting him and forcing him to cut off his hand to save himself from the infection. Covered in blood, half crazed, and missing a hand, Ash is greeted by a new group of people coming to the cabin, and they, rightfully so, assume Ash is a crazed lunatic murderer, which, fair enough, can't blame them for making that assumption. However, after listening to the tape recordings, they learn what transpired in the cabin. Much like before, the group gets picked off one by one, and Ash is once again possessed by a demonic spirit, but is able to break free after finding his dead girlfriend's hideous necklace that he bought her as a gift. It's at this point where Ash dons his iconic hand chainsaw and boomstick. The events crescendo, with Ash facing the demon in its physical form, but he is overpowered by the demon and stuck in its grip. However, in her dying breath, a member of the new group is able to read a passage from the lost pages of the Necronomicon, banishing the demon into a portal, and Ash enjoys a brief moment of peace from the badness. That is until he is sucked into a time vortex, and reappears in England in the 1300s, where he's hailed as a prophet. Until he isn't. We got like another instance here of timey-wimey, wobbly-bobbly kind of bullshit going on, where call it retcon, call it remaster, remake, whatever you want, things change around a little bit. Ash is actually taken prisoner, as if this man hasn't gone for enough. He is taken prisoner and stuck between a feud between Lord Arthur and Henry the Red. During this, Arthur's wise man believes Ash to be the Promised One, a prophesized hero from the sky who would save the people from the terror of the Deadites. Ash is then chucked into a pit with two captured Deadites, where he's expected to meet his doom. However, this is Ash goddamn fucking Williams we're talking about, and he is able to slay the Deadites with ease, escaping the pit and being the first one to do so. Ash is treated like a king and even falls for a beautiful maiden. However, Ash cannot rest for long and is soon sent on a quest to eliminate the Deadite scourge that is running rampant in the English countryside. However, before setting off, Ash and a medieval blacksmith is able to create a metal robotic hand, which, yeah, fair enough. I mean, props to the blacksmith. And you know what? Good on Ash. He's smarter than people give him credit. Geared up, Ash heads to a cursed graveyard to collect the Necronomicon, where he discovers there are in fact 3 separate copies. Ash would butcher the incantation, leading an army of Deadites to attack the castle, led by his evil doppelganger. Ash, with the help of both Lord Arthur's and Henry the Red's armies, defeat the Army of Darkness, and as a reward he is given a potion by the Wise Man, which allows him to sleep to his own time. Once again, we encounter some timey-wimey bullshit, and we are treated to 2 separate outcomes of this event. One where Ash sleeps and finds himself back in the correct timeline, and another where he oversleeps and wakes up in a post-apocalyptic hellscape, creating a second or third diverging timeline. Who's keeping track of those? Ash is now back working at a big box store, where he is forced once again to face the Deadites. Now, did this really happen? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I mean, in the Army of Darkness comic, it is a continuity that continues from that, but that's also just not canon. And in Ash vs. The Evil Dead, Army of Darkness isn't really ever brought up. That was because they didn't have the rights to it, so you can make up your own mind on this one. We enter a period of Ash's life I'm going to refer to as the Dark Years. Now, upon Ash returning, it is realised, several people are missing and presumed dead, and the police investigate the cabin, but can't really pin it to anyone because, demons. The local community puts 2 and 2 together and decides Ash must have murdered his friends, sister, and strangers that we meet at the cabin, and refer to him as Ashy Slashy. With his father disowning him and the town turning its back on him, Ash decides to leave Elk Grove for good. And during the next few decades, canon information is rather sparse on Ash's activities during this time. Taking Ash's word, he travelled the country, working at and being fired from various value stop stores across the country, travelling and living in an old Airstream trailer. Now, during this time, Ash finds another Necronomicon. Now, is this one of the 3 he found in the Middle Ages? Is this the same one from the cabin? Who knows? But he keeps it safe in a locked wooden box along with his weed. He also briefly appears in the ending of Evil Dead 2013, saying his iconic line. However, there is a fair bit of debate if this is canon or just basically a cameo, so you decide. At 56, Ash is working at a value stop, where he becomes friends with fellow co-worker Pablo, who he entertains with his countless heroic stories. During a night of heavy substance abuse and drinking, while trying to impress a lady friend, he reads a passage from the Necronomicon, once again releasing the evil. Once again plagued with deadites, Ash takes up the mantle once again to clear the scourge of deadites from the land. During this time, he also teams up with Kelly, Pablo's upstairs neighbor. During a spiritual trip, Ash learns his only option was to take the book and bury it under the cabin where this all started. While at the cabin, Ash makes a deal with Ruby, the author of the Necronomicon, surrendering the book to her in order to live out his days as he always dreamed, living in Jacksonville, Florida. And for 6 months, Ash has peace, living out his days. And once again, deadites attack, forcing Ash to pick up his chainsaw once more. He decides to return back to his hometown, Elk Grove, to retrieve the book. During this time, he's able to reconnect with his father, who he's finally able to convince that he really was the hero of the story, as opposed to being Ashy Slashy. But that is until he is hit by a car, Ash's possessed Oldsmobile. During this time, Ash's former best friend is killed by deadites, and Ash is arrested by a sheriff, sending him to an insane asylum under the control of a demon. During this time, the demon attempts to convince Ash that all the events leading up to this were simply a delusion, and even using a puppet with his likeness to reinforce these illusions. Now the puppet, to no one's surprise, is a demon, which is swiftly killed by Kelly. Around this time, Pablo would lose his life. Ash would take the opportunity to travel back in time once more to 1981 in order to stop the events of the whole franchise before they even happened. However, Ash is told just by him being there has messed up the timeline. However, Ash is able to kill the demon and put him in the insane asylum and being returned to his own time. Following this, Pablo was revived from the dead, and Ash would enjoy several months of peace, where he'd open up his very own business, Ashy Slashy's hardware store and sex toy emporium. During the opening of the store, Ash would be reunited with a former lover, who he'd conceived a child with, Brandy. During another deadite attack, Ash would lose his former lover, taking his daughter under his wing. During this, a past version of Ruby, who is now in the present, I know, look, we've got too much to cover, we don't have enough time, just watch the TV show, it's great. Alright, moving on. Past Ruby, who's now present Ruby, attempts to convince Brandy, Ash's daughter, to turn against Ash, as it's part of the prophecy to the end of the world that Ash's offspring must turn on him. At the same time, Ash is sought out by the Knights of Samaria, who believe the world will be ending soon. Ash's daughter is killed, and grief-stricken, Ash does the logical thing, killing himself and venturing into an unknown dimension called the Deadlands to retrieve Brandy's soul, placing it back in her body and reviving her. Though it was this action that accidentally led to a rift between the worlds, opening and allowing the long-banished Dark Ones, an ancient group of entities responsible for the Deadites we see in all of the films, to use this opportunity to enter the earthly realm once more. The Dark Ones released deadites across the globe, including a gigantic creature known as Kanda the Destroyer. The US military now steps in with the solution to just nuke Elk Grove, which, at this point, you know what, fair enough. However, Ash decides this is his opportunity to step up, what his whole life has been leading up to. He sends his daughter and friends away and decides to attack the monster head-on using a tank. Hell yeah. He is dragged to safety by one of the members of the Knights of Samaria and falls into a coma. Ash then wakes up decades later with a robotic hand. It is revealed to Ash that the world is now an apocalyptic wasteland, and Ash is now the only hope in restoring order. Reuniting with an upgraded Oldsmobile, Ash drives into the sunset to once again save humanity. And for now, this is the full canon story of Ash Williams. But is there a scientific explanation to a lot of the things that happen in this film? Well, maybe. First things first, Ash's true age is somewhat unknown, but we can theorize. We know Ash's birthday is in April 1957, making him 25 during the start of this crazy adventure. Simple enough, until Army of Darkness, where Ash travels back in time to medieval England. Now, assuming Army of Darkness takes place in 1300 exactly, and Ash falls asleep to wake up in the modern day, that would mean he'd have to be asleep for 682 years, making him 707 years old. Now, fast forward to the events of Ash vs. Evil Dead. The series starts 32 years after the incident at the cabin. making him 739 years old. Now, it's hard to say the exact amount of time Ash vs. Evil Dead takes place over, but it's around a year and a half, give or take. So by the tank incident, he should be around 740. Now finally, when Ash wakes up in the future, all we know is that an unknown amount of time has passed and technology has advanced somewhat. Okay, this is going to get a bit weird for a second, so stay with me. Now, there aren't many hints we can rely on for at what point in the future is. Technology is advanced, but who knows? Ash made a fucking robotic hand in medieval Europe, so that's fucking out the window. Buildings are collapsed, but that could be a nuke, that could be a giant monster, we don't know. However, the Oldsmobile, assuming it's the same Oldsmobile, is there. Now, truth be told, I don't know a lot about classic cars, but my dad does actually restore them. So I had a very quick phone call with him, where essentially I was asking, how long can a car stay a car, even if you keep replacing parts? And his estimate for a car made in the 1970s that may or may not have been treated for rust, 50 years is sort of the max you can push it. So, going by when we know it started to where it's ending, we can kind of reasonably assume that Ash would be at about 790 in the very last time we see him in the show. But how did Ash survive his multiple injuries, and why did his personality change from scared everyman to heroic himbo? Well, I'm glad you asked. Now, thanks to a great Reddit user, Wonderland Diary, shout out to you, they did a great post basically explaining that repeated head trauma could lead to a change in personality and even an increase in speed and endurance based on real-world medical science. Now, if someone suffers repeated blows to the head, which, let's be honest, yeah, Ash has quite a few of those, these can change someone's speech pattern and even affect the inner ear, changing how one hears themselves. Additionally, this is kind of crazy, getting hit in the head enough times can cause an increase in white blood cell counts, the main thing that's, fending off infection, explaining how Ash doesn't succumb to gangrene at any point during the movies. This can also explain why he didn't just drop dead after being taken prisoner in medieval times and being forced to walk for miles. Brain trauma also has a weird effect on muscle and nerve control, allowing the body to use more muscle than the body would traditionally allow. And the kicker to all of this is that every single one of these symptoms can be exacerbated by increased vibrations of the skull, which could easily be caused by, I don't know, a chainsaw on your arm. In conclusion, it's not only the repeated head trauma which causes Ash's personality to change, but every time Ash uses that chainsaw, he is increasing the effects of every single one of these symptoms, which is why he gets campier and campier as the series goes on. In conclusion, Ash is one tough old bastard, having a life that has spanned hundreds of years, killing over 63 entities, including Deadites, humans, and evil versions of himself. Give or take if you want to count Deadite heads and bodies as separate things, and the two Lindas aforementioned. Now, he's also died about 3 separate times if you want to count him being possessed as a Deadite, which, let's be honest, that's a death sentence for most people. And this is what makes Ash J. Williams the king. Did you like the video? Did I get something wrong? Do you not believe Ash is actually hundreds of years old because that time he was sleeping he was in stasis and thus that doesn't count as aging? Well, comment down below and let me know. And if you like this, we've got a lot more videos on the Evil Dead franchise, so click on the link on your screen right now to watch it. Now, in the meantime, I've been Montgomery, and remember people, stay groovy.